All right, welcome back to the Gateway Defense Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Brennan Brennick. With me, as always, is my co-host, Justin Anderson. We're just two guys who are passionate about performance shooting, training, gear, and pretty much everything in between. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing scoped carbines and DMRs. And joining us in the discussion today is Mark Smith of JBS Training Group. Mark, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you on. Let's just kind of kick this off. I think there's going to be a bunch to talk about today, but let's just kick this off with giving our listeners a little bit of about you, who you are, what you do, and kind of what your area of expertise is. And then we'll jump into it.
So, who I am. So I am Mark Smith. I am a father. I am a husband. I am an American, and I shoot guns and stuff. And I run a company called JBS Training Group that has been far more fortunate than I ever intended for it to be. Kind of started that just to kind of help my buddies not look so ridiculously lost when they were doing the thing. And it kind of blossomed into something that's been really cool, man. As far as the DMR gas gun side of the house, started competing in that just out of it was just an interesting niche, right? Like I just wanted to go play around in scope gun stuff. I didn't want to do the PRS stuff. That sounded way too boring to me to do like one shot and if you miss kind of thing. Because I was thinking like that's not how really practically you shoot anything. And it just didn't appeal to me. I understand in that game that's how they do it, but that just didn't appeal to me. So I found this DMR stuff, which at the time was very outlaw and is still outlaw. It's not sanctioned yet, but it's caught a whole lot more fire here lately than it had back then.
Sure.
And really fell in love with the idea of being capable at 5 and 6 and 7 and 800 yards away. Like that's pretty powerful. And so anyway, that kind of led me to start competing in basically anything I had time to go to, and learned a lot. Like the general trend of competing. Learned a lot in the first couple, and then finally kind of got my wheels back on, and we've been doing I would call respectably at the majority of the ones that we go to, and we win and do like every time it's just like any match, right? Like it's every time you learn something new and find something interesting and. It's just like if I could only do one kind of shooting, it would be, probably this kind of shooting. I tell guys all the time, man, like I dig pistols. Pistol shooting's fascinating. I dig the carbine stuff, the red dot stuff, but like my heart lives at about 400 to 500 yards. And I can't turn it off. I love it.
That's
So,
cool, man. I love it.
Love
I
it.
love it. So how long have you been doing kind of the scope carbine stuff? Like when was that?
hmm,
Because when you first started teaching, or at least when you first started JBS, you
mhm.
weren't really doing a whole lot of that, as I recall.
No.
So some backstory for the listeners: you were one of the first people in a class, like one of the first ever classes that I took. You were there back with Nick Young and Aaron Brumley and all those dudes and Max.
Hmm.
And you were either teaching or attending or all of the above. But then you launched JBS shortly after that. But yeah, when did that kind of kick off for you and like what initially kind of sparked that interest?
Um, I was uh, I was chasing a a big 6 point buck in the season of 2021. I think it was, or no, it would have been the season of 2020 because it was 2021 was shortly thereafter, or maybe it was 2019. I can't remember, somewhere around in there. Um, and he had gotten far enough away from me where I could still see him, but I remember thinking like, okay, I can just like I can put this reticle on him, but like I know that ain't right. Like I know something else has to happen. Like you can't just point and
Mm,
click forever. You know what I mean? So I
right.
knew that I needed to do something, but I didn't really know what I needed to do. And like I started digging around on the internet for like information on like how do you do this. And as you might imagine, like I just found so much BS from so many different places, and all of it contradicted with itself. And it was just a mess. And so I was like, man, I'm gonna go take a class on this crap and just figure out what I'm doing. Like I had no aspirations to get hooked on it like I have been. I just wanted to figure out what I was doing. And so started, looking at some YouTube videos and playing around with some different stuff. Took a couple of like little local, I was a Navy SEAL and here's my scope carbine one day, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And talking to some dudes that knew some dudes and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually I ended up trying to think of where the first like actual, like what keeps popping up in my head is Ridgeline. Um,
Okay.
I went to like Ridgeline is where I learned the most I had ever learned. And
Okay.
like once I learned how much there was to know, like that was when the fire started. And ever since then, that's kind of been what I've been interested in. But that was where it all started, chasing a deer where that rascal got out to about 250 yards and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
We've
Cool,
all
man.
had that
That's
feeling.
awesome.
mhm.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And the Ridgeline dudes seem to be still putting out a lot of pretty cool training. I very much would like to take a class with them at some point.
Yeah, same.
And so shameless plug for Ridgeline real quick. Those boys don't pay me nothing, man. They I don't I ain't gonna sit here and say I don't get perks from them. I mean, they do, like I test stuff for them and things like that. But like there is not another scope carbine, like scope gun world that exists like that, where like what you guys would dig about it and what I really dig about it is that they are 30% of it's knowledge, 70% of it's performance shooting, man. Like we don't care what you did, we don't care what you're gonna do, we care about now. Like show me,
Yes.
And they are all
That's
about
it.
like getting after it. And
That's where the money's made, baby.
There's not a son of a gun on that hill that is not proficient with a firearm. They are all about their own skill set. So
That's
I
right.
like it a lot. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Well, I think that's a good segue to talking about kind of the topic of the day, which, for lack of a better term, I just said scoped carbines and DMRs, right? DMR is kind of a hot buzzword or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So let's just get into it. We got a couple of questions that we're kind of eager to pick your brain on and just kind of see how you're thinking about this, and we're really not trying to get you to recommend stuff for people or whatever, because we all get those questions all the time. But I think it's interesting to pick somebody's brain who's doing this stuff and be like, tell me about your philosophy behind this kind of stuff. So with that being said, question one is, when should somebody look into buying a scope? So an LPVO, or a 2 to 10 or 3 to whatever, over another option such as a red dot with a magnifier or something like that.
So the cut and dry answer that I give to students is when your naked eye no longer is able to see whatever it is that you need to see, and that's that ain't even really the whole story right there, right? Because like, what does that even mean? What do I need to see? Well, that's all based on target size and accuracy requirements, right? So like, uh, I can see an 8-inch piece of steel at 300 yards away, but I cannot see what I need to see on a B8, which has an 8 ring on it that is also 8 inches, right? So you change the target, now all of a sudden I can't see what I need to see,
Mm-hmm.
One of the little phrases that I really like, Mike Olivella from Precourt, he says it a lot, and I kind of stole it from him because I've experienced it. Like, you guys ever shoot on like you shoot on like a true B8 to like zero a rifle or something like that, and you get a result, right? And then you try to shoot on a paster or a square or a triangle, and you get a totally different group size. Like it's almost like certain targets smile at certain people, right? And so based on your eyeballs, what like the lighting conditions, the humidity potentially, like external environment factors, all these different things, like can you see what you need to see? Um, and the interesting part is that as long as you can see the target, you can really get away with a lot more than what people think. So like one of the things that you guys have probably seen before is you back dudes up to like 25 yards on a USPSA IPSC, and they'll say, well, I can't see the A zone. And well,
Yeah.
right, but where is it, right?
Right.
Well, it's in the middle of that target. Well, then shoot the middle of the target, right? And so same kind of thing, right? Well,
Yeah.
I can't see the whole circle or whatever at 300 yards. Well, can you see any of it? Well, yeah. Well, I got to float the top of it to be able to even get a hit on it. Okay, cool. Well, now I can see it again. You know what I mean? Because my dot's up there at the top of it, and so learning what you can get away with and what you actually need to see is a big thing. So I would say that now there's a big difference between saying hit a 10-inch circle at 300 yards and hit the center of that 3-inch circle, right? So sometimes you need more glass. Like it's blatantly obvious that we all shoot typically our best groups when we can see as much as we can possibly see on the magnification scale, right?
Yep.
Not now, that being said, caveat be to certain positions. Like sometimes if you're super shaky, magnifying it's only going to make it worse, right? So I don't magnify it. But most of the time when I'm grouping a gun for accuracy, I'm gonna max out that 3 to 18. Most of the time, if I've got a 6 to 36, even better, right? So what do you need to see to shoot a 0.3 MOA group if you were going to do it is a lot different than what do you need to see to hit the center of that paper, right? Like the center of the paper is one thing, so precision and accuracy, right? And you kind of have to be able to float both of those, and it really comes down to your practical application. Like, what's the shot require, and can you see that? Because if you can't, then you need magnification. In the competitive realm, that yields the question, well, how much, right? How much magnification until is there a too much, and so on and so forth, right? So the little kind of diagnostic I use for that is I need enough magnification at the match to be able to see my own data. And what that means is I need to see my own trace. I want to see my own splash. I want to see, I don't want to be reliant on some RO that probably came here because they gave him a free spot and he never did this before. You know what I mean? I need to be able to see all this. And so once I reach that threshold, then that's enough, right? And I would prefer if that threshold was not the maxed out part of the scope. I want that to be somewhere in the middle third, preferably. So that's kind of how I think about it, man.
Yeah, that's cool. I think something that's overlooked a lot when people ask that question is, what have you tried to shoot? Right? Because I think that's a big deal. People are like, well, I'm planning on, building this rifle that's going to shoot, X number of yards. And I'm like, well, have you tried to shoot that far before? Or what are the distances you are currently doing with your current setup? And I think IDing that target is spot on. The other thing is not everything is a white painted piece of steel, right? Depending on your context. That's something I definitely ran into, kind of messing around with LPVOs and scopes for the last couple of years working for a major optics company was, some things are much harder to see than a piece of steel. I could see a piece of steel at dang near 700 yards with my naked eye. So could I potentially, float a red dot somewhere above that thing? And I mean, you could, but if it's not white, I can't see it at all. If it's the same color as the dirt, there's no chance that I'm going to even see that thing with my naked eye. So
possible don't equal wild. Probable.
Exactly. Exactly.
So there again, right? When you talk about obscure targets and things like that, can you see what you need to see with your naked eye? And if the answer is no, then yeah, you need glass, man. One of the little exercises that we do at Performance Out Yonder is a little target ID run, right? Where all of the targets have, and I'm not going to give away the whole thing because it's a spoiler, but basically you will have to be able to discern very limited information and make a decision. And it's not blatantly obvious what you should do. You're going to have to just decide, man. And if you're wrong, if you're wrong, you go to prison for the rest of your life. Right. And when you go into it like that, you'll find out how much glass you need and where and what you want to prioritize over, clarity or magnification and all the what's more important. Well, go do something like that and you'll find out.
Yeah. I dig it. Justin, anything to add on that idea?
Yeah.
Because I know you've been running a dot and magnifier a good bit lately.
Yeah, Mark, I want to say when you came out and did a class up here in Wisconsin a few years ago, I want to say you had mentioned that what you just said when you're even at 50 yards, right? You put up a target with some sort of discrimination, and depending on whatever your setup is, you have to make a decision on that target. And if you're wrong, you go to prison the rest of your life. I remember you saying that in class, and that rang true for me. I was like, dang,
dude, people got all these ideas, right, about how they're gonna go and save the day in their fantasies and all, but they never think about the risk associated with that fantasy, right? And dude, there are people today who are in prison because they did the right thing. You know what I mean? And and even more that are in prison because they did the wrong thing, right? And so it does matter. And even under knots, all these dudes, and this ain't a knock at this idea, right? But I see a lot of guys that are rocking parallel zeros, and when you ask them why, they're like, oh, because I can just point and click out to 300, 400 yards. And it's like, dude, where are you shooting beyond 100 yards? Like, these are duty guys. Like, they're going to fight potentially, and it's like, where are you doing this in the civilized United States beyond eyeball distance, basically? And so one of the super cool drills that Tap Rack does, when me and him do night vision classes together, he'll paint letters on a target, and you start at 200 yards. Or no, it's not letters, it's numbers, numbered 1 through 5. You start at 200 yards. At 200 yards, can anybody see the number? Once you can see the number, shoot that many bullets at your target. And if you're wrong, you go to prison the rest of your life, right? And so nobody can see it at 200. Let's move up to 150. Nobody can see it at 150, right? And we move out. And these are big old numbers. These are C-zone size numbers, but nobody's willing to take the gamble, Yeah. And so super neat.
I had done something similar at a night vision match that I actually hosted at my range a few years ago. Mine was only at 50. So I only did at 50, and I said, all right, yeah, whatever target you see, we usually call out, or I had something written. I had like note cards written on a barrel, and I would say, all right, you have to like focus your nods, read the number, and then shoot the amount of, rounds at that target. And even at 50, guys were shooting, 8s that they thought were 4s or something like that, or 9s instead of 4s.
Dude, like when he ran that blind for me, like I actually ran it, and like I've got 3,000 bomb tubes, man, that I waited like 2 years to get, and I still didn't shoot until the 50-yard line, because I just couldn't tell. Now there's some little tricks you can do, like one of the things that Duffy did, that rascal, John Dufresne, you can manipulate your diopter on your tube and a diopter on your magnifier to be able to actually see, like you can create like a little mini clip-on with the magnifier, right? And so Duffy actually shot at 150. And everybody was like, how in the world did you do that? Well, it's because he was able to manipulate his stuff to be able to see farther, But outside of that, just regular eyeballs, like you ain't going to do that.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you made a little comment earlier, and I want to touch on that. The difference between accuracy and precision. Can you explain that a little bit and touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, accuracy is you always, right? Precision is the capability of the gun. It's capability of the gun. Like, so if the gun is 0, let's assume, right, and you miss the center, and you're grouping, let's say you're grouping off center somewhere, but the gun is 0. Well, this could be a positional inconsistency. This could be a parallax induction problem. This could be a number of different things. That doesn't mean you need to re-zero the gun. It means that you are dicked up, right? And so accuracy is I'm grouping in the center-ish of a target. Right? Precision is how tight that group is. So you can be very precise, but be off somewhere. You're not accurate, right? You're off target somewhere else. And you can also be very accurate, but not precise, which is what most dudes struggle with, that part. They can be somewhere center-ish of the target, but they struggle to tighten it up. And a lot of times it's not a fault of their own. It's a fault of the components that they're using. A lot of guys are trying to get the best groups they've ever gotten with, like, XM 193 that they got at the local store, and then they don't realize that's just not the way. But that's essentially it, is that accuracy is based on basically your ability to shoot the middle of a target, and then precision is how tight the gun can actually do that.
Cool.
I like it. So for you, once you've kind of decided, okay, I've got some guns, or I have the need or desire to shoot farther distances, right, beyond what a red dot's capable of, and you start to go look for something to put on top of your gun in terms of glass, what kind of stuff are you looking for? What kind of scopes are you running? Are you running kind of like a mid-range something? Are you running LPVOs? What are you what are you shopping for?
So I'm looking first at like what my 90% use case is, right? So I've harped on LPVOs for the longest time, and how, like, these scope companies drive me banana sandwich, man. It's like they're like, look at our fancy reticle, look at our glass clarity, look at our field of view, and it's like, yeah, bro, but your 1X looks like donkey balls, right? And like, you know what I mean, like that, and that's why I bought this thing, is because I'm using it at 1X. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I'm real big on the 1X, because if I'm buying an LPVO that has a 1X on it, I'm assuming that the 1X is important to me, because that's probably where I'm just going to live most of my life, right? Therefore, it should be good. I will take a whole lot of trash on the higher end magnification to get a great 1X in that context, right? On the flip side, if the vast majority of my stuff that I'm doing is, 3 MOA targets, and I use sizes, not necessarily distance, right? Because like it ain't just the distance, it's the size too. If you're shooting, 3 MOA targets constantly, then you're probably gonna want a little more glass than maybe a 6X, right? I don't ever want to be maxed out on magnification. I don't want to say ever. I don't like to be maxed out on magnification. That's a lot of people don't understand that when you max out magnification, that is the worst visual that the scope can provide, right? Like that's
Correct.
of all those settings, that's the worst.
Yep.
The field of view is reduced the most, the clarity is reduced the most, the eye box is reduced the most, like everything's bad, right? So I would like to just live in the middle of that. So the old rule of thumb, man, typically works pretty good. For just shooting, I want 1X minimum for every 100 yards, and that's absolutely minimum. I want 2X to compete with. So if I'm shooting out to 800 yards potentially, I want 16X minimum on the gun. For the kind of shooting that I'm doing, which is typically going to be somewhere between 2 minutes up to 12-minute targets at speed. So the size of the target really does come into play. Anything 3 minutes or less, I need to see more than what most typical naked eyeball will do. And so like you got to prioritize like where do you live, man. So for instance, a great example, I just finished a night vision match where the priority was going to be 100 yards and in. I didn't use an optic at all. I used a laser, right? So I prioritized my 90%. Now I still had the optic set to night vision setting and checked, right? Because I might end up doing some weird stuff I don't plan on here in a minute. So I want that thing to be on board if needed. Yeah. This coming weekend, I'm traveling down to Georgia to shoot in a 2-day quantified performance match where I know them rifles going to put me out at 1,000 yards. And I know they're going to be putting me on, 3-minute targets basically the whole time.
Wow.
Therefore, the optic changes, right? So now we're running 3-18 Mark V. Fast forward to the next weekend, you guys will start to realize I kind of screwed myself. I accidentally signed up for all these matches separately, didn't realize they were back to back to back, right? So last weekend was night vision, this weekend's DMR. The next weekend, I'm shooting an IWI IPSC World Shoot at the Clinton House with a freaking carbine, right?
Yep.
So that's going to be the 1 to 10, right? Because there are I think 200 shots or 250 of those shots are going to be inside of 200 yards. And that to me is 1X world, right? I can get down with that. But there's also over 25 of those shots that are beyond 200 yards in and up to 500 yards, right? And so 10% of the time, right? If you look at the math, right? 250 of these shots are inside of this, but 25 of them are this. Well, 10% of the time, you're going to need to see more than just 1X. So I will take the Vortex Razor 1 to 10 and I'll crank it up to 8 or 10X, and I will accept that 8 or 10X is not as good as something like a 3 to 18 or a 5 to 25's 8 or 10X, right? Just by default, but that's okay because the 1X is there, right? And I'm using the one prioritizing the 1X. So I'm floating between, DOT and LPVO and a higher powered scope just based on what we're doing with the thing. So that's kind of how I think that the cut and dry answer to your question, man, is that the answers are on the range, right? Like go shoot and try it. And if it sucks and it don't work good, then try something else, man. You know what I mean?
That's it.
The answers on the range. I ask guys all the time. One of the neatest questions in shooting is like if I set out a 5-yard target and then I set out a 25-yard target, same size, same target, right? And then I ask a guy, how do you know how fast you can shoot those? Like just by looking at them, how do you know, right? Like how do you know what to apply? And that's like saying, how do you know you love your wife, right? It's like, well, I just do, man. Because experience, right? You didn't love her like you do her now until experience happened, right? And so same thing with this. Like I tried some stuff and I figured out that this don't work, and so I need to do something different, And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with everything, including scope rifle shooting. Go try it.
Well, dang it, Mark. Are you saying that there's not one optic that can do it all? Come on now. Are you saying we have to go work? Actually,
isn't that new 1 to 36 or whatever, right? Like,
what I like to do is actually carry a dot gun, but sling a 3 to 18 rifle on my back, right? And there's 2 pistols, 1 iron sights, 1 dot. Just
exactly.
I was just gonna say two pistols, AIWB.
Yeah, and I need a fold knife and a fixed blade.
Yep,
that's right. Right. I like that, man. I think, like, long story short, stop trying to make one thing do everything.
Dude,
And I think
that road leads to sorrow.
it does, and it's intimidating too. I think for a lot of guys who have gotten away with their one pistol doing most things that you need a pistol to do. It's not the same when you get to rifles, and especially not the same when you ask rifles to shoot farther than 100 yards. Like your 90% is beyond 100 yards. Like it's not the same. And I see guys looking at this stuff, and it's expensive, right? For good reason. Like the good stuff is expensive. The rifles are expensive. Glass is very expensive. And they're looking at it. They're like, well, I want to shoot PRS, and I'll probably shoot some DMR matches, and I probably want to do NRL Hunter, and then I want to do this. And it's like, bro, you can't do that all with one gun. Come on, like you have a tool for the job.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
all right, so I got this idea. I'm gonna pitch it to you, right?
Okay.
So here we go. Right, you tell people at Vortex, let me know when it's time to test it. I'm their boy. So I really dig. So I got a SIG 4T Romeo the other day, right? And there's some really cool stuff going on with that thing. And I got some stuff in my brain that if an optics company were to do, would truly blur the line between LPVO and red dot capability. But they gotta do it a specific way. And I ain't no engineer, right? I don't know how to do it, but I do believe it's possible. But imagine if there was, I don't even want to give it all away publicly, but imagine if there was a red dot where you could, I'm gonna do this very vaguely. I'll talk to you offline about the details of it, but a red dot that had a capability to allow you to truly see what you needed to see at in and up to 500 yards, and that reticle was yours. Like it wasn't anybody else's. It belongs to you, right? And now all I need to do is pop a 3x or a 5x or a 6x magnifier behind it and understand how to get consistency behind the gun. And I have my own gun and its own data written in front of me, right? And I can choose to turn that on and off very easily when needed, right? So I'm shooting at 1x, 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 1x. Holy smokes, there's a 400-yard target. Push a button, magnifier up, shoot that son of a gun, back off, and I can continue to run. The problem that has existed for the longest time with these red dots is people are trying to put in ballistic drops, and ballistic drops don't work, right? That sounds good until you get into like stuff that ain't the size of a refrigerator, right? And then all of a sudden it don't work real good no more.
Yep.
And so what I need to be able to put my data in the thing, right?
Yep.
And
exactly.
And I got some ideas, so that's all I'll say.
That'd be real cool. That's definitely something that has been talked about. I'd be interested to see if any company ends up doing something like that. I think it would definitely change the game for sure.
It's
okay.
It's a shooter's solution to a shooter's problem.
Yeah, I don't like to hold in space, man. It's not precise enough, and all I need is a half minute, or maybe even main dot's 2 minutes, and just like the 4T, the drop dots are 1 minute, and then maybe even some more dots that maybe even half minute, depending on how far out we're going with this thing. Because like magnifying stuff at 3x, dude, like I was the 3, 4, and 500-yard target line at the range the other day, like wasn't scary at all. Like I could see it. You think about it, it's like bringing a 600-yard target to 200 yards. Like it's not, it ain't that big a deal no more. So like that capability, it is only hindered by the fact that I don't have a measuring stick in the scope or in the dot that coincides with what my bullet's doing. Like that's the only hindrance that keeps us from being able to do that. So,
exactly. Exactly. I think that's one of the biggest reasons that I run an LPVO for stuff that I can also do with a red dot and a magnifier. It's just a little bit easier because I do have a freaking reticle that is workable.
So
and I don't have to, like you said, hold in space.
Another thing that I've wanted forever, just as like, and this is, this ain't going to be a hot thing. It's ain't going to sell like hotcakes because, again, like Justin said, like a lot of people ain't shooters enough to understand the benefit of this. But like, even if I had a magnifier that over in the side of the glass just had a little etched mill reticle where I could mill targets, just so I can know, like, because I know my ballistic flight path, right? And I know what I can get away with, but I need to know how big that target is to know if I can get away with it on that one. You know what I mean? And I just need to be able to measure some stuff. So like even something like that, like give me some capability, man.
Right. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot that the industry can hopefully expand into, but I do think that this kind of stuff is picking up and is becoming kind of more of a hot thing, which is awesome. So, so you mentioned matches, right? Shooting a fair amount of those these days. So obviously Justin and I, yourself included, we all have done the USPSA thing and kind of know how that works. It's pretty standardized. Um, Talk to us about these gas gun matches that you're going to. What is the structure of them? Like talk to us like we've never been to one, because we haven't.
Yeah. So I have not seen one yet where if you possess a 14.5 or a 16-inch gun and any 1 to something, right? 1 to 6, 1 to 10. Like I hadn't seen the match yet where you can't be competitive in that division. If you got the skill set to be, right?
Okay.
So one of the things that I really wanted to emulate with my Performance Out Yonder match that I did in Texas last year was like, dude, literally bring whatever you've got. Like it's fine. So like the regular dude division was which I think is a bitchin' name, right? Like regular dude.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
the max barrel length was 16 inches. So ain't nobody out there running no hot rod stuff, right?
Okay.
And the optic that you had on the gun, the main optic that magnified, had to have a 1x on it. Like it couldn't be a 2 to 10. You got to be, it's going to be 10, you're going to be 1 to 10, right? And the offset dot does not count as your 1x solution. It's got to be on the actual magnified optic, right? And so there, but right there, and that gun had to be a 5.56 gun. No other calibers allowed, right? So like there, you've condensed yourself to like you're pretty competitive. Ain't nobody, you can't show up with anything that's going to be anything more than what you've got, really. So that's cool.
Normal guns.
And you typically will see that, right? They'll call it something like, TAC light, or they might call it general purpose, or everybody makes up their own names because nothing's really sanctioned yet. But it's typically going to be somewhere where it's going to be a 16 to an 18-inch max barrel length. Sometimes you might see some dudes that allow, like QP's rules, quantified performance. They allow any cartridge in that 16-inch barrel length category, right? Some people don't like that. Some people do. So straight up, like 5.56 guns are at a potential disadvantage in certain conditions against some of these 6mm Wildcat stuff, right? However, their retort, and I'm not really trying to speak for them, but I think the way that they think of it is okay, well, if you feel that way, then go build you one of those 6mm something or another guns and come out and compete in it, right? It really is just a magnification issue with the scope, or a magnification thing when it comes to that division. You can't be over, I think I don't think you can be over a 10x. They might have bumped it to 12. I can't remember. But the March optic, that March 1.5 to 15 or something crazy, like that one threw a kink in it where they had to like revisit the rules. But I think it's still, you have to have a 1.5 minimum on it, and I don't think it can go over 10. And then you get into the next division up, which is going to be kind of like your purpose-built DMR guns. So these are going to be 18 to 22-inch guns, typically, and they're going to be 3 to 18s, 5 to 25, 6 to 36 optics on them, and they are also going to be mandated into the 5.56/308 category. And then you got open, and open typically, from what I've seen, is open. It's bring them and ring them, right? Whatever you got. And that one is that's its own vibe, man. There's some wild stuff shows up in open division.
Yeah, I bet.
Most of the time, I'm either going to be in the general purpose or the regular dude stuff, or the quantified performance calls it practical precision, which is the so at the match this weekend, I'll be running an 18-inch 5.56 gun with a 3 to 18 on it.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Is that the biggest level of involvement? Is those divisions or is it pretty even?
Dude, it's really a toss-up. What I have found is it's kind of based on the culture of the match, right? So like QP's match is going to be pretty even amongst the general purpose guys and the practical precision guys. The open guys there's not a lot of open guys typically at any of these matches, believe it or not. So like out of 100 competitors, you might have 10 to 15 open guys, maybe. And then the rest of them is going to be almost split between general purpose and the rest of them. And then you go to something like there's a DMR match that goes on at the Clinton House pretty regular that's put on by the Proving Grounds called Tactical Sniper Series. And that's a great match, by the way, if you guys ever want to make your way down here and shoot it with me. You can stay at the house. You can stay at this house. You know what I mean? But anyway.
Sounds like we need to do that.
Yeah, dude, that'd be great. That one, I think like I would say over 80 to 90% of the competitors are going to be in I can't remember what he calls it, pack light, I think is what he calls it. Basically,
Okay.
everybody's running 5.56 guns.
Okay.
And you'll
That's
have
cool.
like 3 bolt gun shooters and 3 open shooters, and that's about it. But his tack light division is not separated by glass. So like you can run the 1 to 6, you can run the 6 to 36. It doesn't matter, right? Bring your gun and do the thing. His match too, which I think you guys you'll either love this or hate it, right? Well, maybe not, because I'm kind of indifferent to it. But his match, he has pistol as well. So you bring a pistol, and you're going to shoot some pistol targets along the way, because in his mind, like the SOPs for the designated marksman is like you carrying a pistol. So in my mind, I'm like, whatever. I ain't in the military. I don't care what we do. And some dudes are like, well, and so there's 2 sides of it. Some guys are like, well, I just want to shoot a freaking rifle, man. I don't want to shoot pistol stuff. That's why I'm signing up for a rifle match. But then the other guys are like, no, this is cool, right? Because this is like the total package. I don't care. But I also have the benefit of being pretty good at both of them. So I think that might skew my decision. I don't really care what we do.
Yeah,
but you
fair enough.
can imagine if you prioritize the rifle, but you suck at pistol, then you don't want to do this. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to do pistol.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a lot of it, but it's neat. It's a neat little thing. It's really cool seeing how, because it is still outlaw, how so many different brains conceptualize what this is. You know what I mean? And like there's like every one of them is different. None of them are ever the same. Like some people you have to drag a sandbag and then shoot something. You know, some of them are a little more physical than others. Some of them are just straight, like QP is just straight raw rifle shooting. And then you got like the tactical sniper series. It's going to be a mix of all kind of different stuff, and it's super fun. I think it truly does make a well-rounded rifleman.
Yeah, I shot a quantified performance match down in Tennessee. I want to say, man, 3 or 4 years ago. And I can honestly say it was the most fun I've ever had with a rifle. And I am just itching to go shoot another one. And I also was shooting a 12.5 with steel case Wolf and a 1 to 6. So I didn't do so hot. I didn't even finish in the top 50%. So there's that.
Yeah.
So there's some retribution to be made.
If you think about like, it is really cool. Like it's super fun. Like it's the most fun you can have with clothes on, man. It's great. Like if you think back to like when we all first like started shooting, the vast majority of people first started shooting, and the environment was something that looked like this. Hey man, go set up that can over there and let me see if I can hit it. Right. And you start like just plinking at something, right? And like this kind of shooting feels a lot like that, but a lot more grown up. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna see if I can plink that thing out there. And like my wife, like, dude, she hates shooting pistols, right? Like she don't want no part of it. She ain't interested in it. It's because she's not that great at it, right? And there's also no target feedback when she does that kind of stuff, right? But dude, she will sit out there and shoot cans with a 22 for hours, right? Like that's all she cares about. And so the first time like you put her on steel at 300 yards, like she freaking loves it. You know what I mean? Like it's like shooting cans. So I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah. Working at Vortex, got exposed to a bunch of the long range kind of curriculum that they were teaching over there. And yeah, first time people make hits past whatever distance, the farthest distances they've ever shot, and they ding that steel, and the little light lights up, and they can hear the little ding, 2 seconds later or whatever. It's pretty cool feeling for people. So cool. So with along the lines of the DMR matches, right? So if a shooter is going, all right, look, like I do a bunch of rifle shooting, maybe, max I ever shoot out to is like 100, 150 yards, something like that, maybe due to range restrictions. But they're wanting to get into this, and maybe matches are the easiest way for them to actually go stretch their legs a little bit. What does that shooter need to know ahead of time as far as preparation? What's the level of skill I need? Because USPSA, right? That we get this question all the time. We made a whole YouTube series on it. Like, what level of skill do I need to be at to go shoot my first match? And I'm like, you need to be able to listen to instructions. You need to be able to be safe, right? And you need to be able to, like, in general, hit targets about 20 yards and in, for the most part, to be able to finish the match. But as far as everything else goes, like, you need to just show up and shoot, and then you will have a very informed opinion of what you need to work on. What is it like for these matches?
So I created the Performance Out Yonder curriculum based on 5 things that I identified the bottom 50% of rifle shooters all had in common, right?
Okay.
There's 5 main things and they're not necessarily doing all 5 of them, but they're doing one of them, and that's why they ended up down there, right? And so there's 2 parts to this. What do I need to do to go compete? And then the second, like part B would be, what do I need to do to go compete well, right? Because like you can go compete, but that don't mean you're going to do well, right? But if you want to go do well, there's 5 things. Right off the bat, man, like this ain't one of the 5. Like I think it goes without saying, like you can't be a spaz with a gun, dude. Like you need to not be pointing guns at people and that kind of crap. Be able to maintain your muzzle control. One of the super weird things that happens at some of these matches is right-handed shooter moving left, and all of a sudden he forgets that his muzzle swings wide. You know, like those kind of things. You got to kind of be tuned up about that pretty subconsciously to be able to do well at this stuff. But the 5 things are very, very simple. And if you can master these 5 things, you will go and do well at one of these matches. And the first one is going to be just basic rifle marksmanship, man. Can you consistently mount the gun the same way every time and pull the trigger without moving it, right? Like that's the fundamental basic. You need to be able to lay prone behind the gun and group the precision potential of the gun, right? Ideally. In a perfect environment, right? Outside of time or whatever. You can do this. So that's number 1. Number 2 is a bad 0 or no 0, right? You'd be amazed how many dudes show up to these matches with a good enough is 0, right? And like I always say, man, good enough's only good enough till it ain't, right? And so what has been good enough on your 100-yard range ain't gonna carry you at 600, right? And so there's that. It's either zeroed or it ain't. If that son of a gun's got 100 clicks on it, 99 are wrong, right? There is a 0 somewhere, right? And so like you need to find that. Number 2 is bad data or no data, right? So they'll show up with no data, and they'll show up with a plan based off a YouTube video that they saw, where if only I got this 22-yard 0, I can just hold center all the way out to God knows how long, you know. And they find out that bird won't fly, right? You've been sold a chicken, sir. So anyway,
minute of man.
Yeah. Godspeed. And then the bad data part is I bought this fancy new Kestrel, or I downloaded this fancy app, and I don't understand the data that I've put into it. And so it's giving me bad data back out of it. But really, it's not giving me bad data. You gave bad data. It's telling you the truth, right? You're the one that told the lie. And so because you don't understand that a 1.7 scope height is not a height over bore. That's a scope height, right? And so the height over bore becomes 2.92. And like now all your data changes and you're like, what the heck, you know? So there's that. And then the third thing is going to be they don't understand the principles of stability. So meaning they don't know how to find stability outside of a barricade that they haven't trained on, right? So if you give them something weird, they don't know how to get stable on it because they don't understand the principles of stability, right? And so like you throw something weird at them and they spend 30 seconds of their allotted 60 seconds trying to figure out how to make the gun stop moving, right? So there's that. And then number 5 is movement. They don't understand that, like everybody, it's so wild to me, and you would be tripped out, right? As a USPSA guy, you come to these matches and like everything in that USPSA sport, once you get the shooting figured out, the rest of it's all movement, right? Like, and the vast majority of it is like, dude, you have got to hustle, like go, right? None of that exists to that level in DMR. Like, it's like dudes will shoot a target and then they will lackadaisically walk to another position, right? And it's like, sir, are you aware that this is still a timed event? Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when they get to that position, one of the ways I like to describe it is they will take 27 steps to build a 3-step position, right? Meaning like they'll run into a barricade, their feet are doing all kind of crazy crap the whole time, you know what I mean? And they'll finally stop moving and you know, and they took 13 seconds when they could have just took 2, right? Walk up there, 1, 2, set, right? And that's mainly the top 5 things that I see that give guys grief, man, is they are missing one of those or many of those 5 elements. And of course, there's all kind of other things you could add to that, like, you know, the outliers are PS, right? Like you need good ammo to shoot these targets with, right? Like PS, your gun should probably be around 2 minutes at max to be able to be competitive, you know. Like, you can't show up with a Bear Creek arsenal and some doggone steel case, Justin, for God's sakes. You know, well,
Fair.
not
It's fair.
not and expect to do well anyway. And then of course one of the big ones that we see, again, like this kind of stuff's unspoken. This goes for any match, but like the gun, like main mission number one, the gun's got to run, man. You'll see a tremendous amount of guns failing, because like what people have not yet realized that they are actually not the gunsmith they have told themselves they are, right? And they've been messing with these things and no range time, because it takes me 2 hours to get out to the range. So I hadn't actually shot the thing. I put this new gas tube on here, and I got this new adjustable block on here, and I swapped this buffer spring out. And this is the first time I've ever shot this thing, is when the buzzer goes off on stage one, right? And it's like, dude, that's crazy to me. Like that's a $125 gamble. And I ain't taking that. So, so
wow.
That in a nutshell, that's what I would conceptualize it as.
That's super helpful.
Yeah. Would you recommend, like, for somebody who maybe hasn't done a lot of that style of shooting, to start practicing some of that stuff to a certain level on their own before they go? Or is it like, just go, you're like, expect this stuff, experience what it's like, and then go back and learn from it? Or it's like, you're going to have a way better time and like not go home mad at yourself, or, as mad at yourself, or just have a better time if you do practice some of this stuff kind of earlier on?
Man, the big issue with this kind of stuff is I don't think that there is a man that exists that just comes up with the right way to do this off the top of his head, right? Like, I think a lot of, like, what we're looking at is the past 150 years of rifle shooting manifested in 2024, right? Like, there's so many lessons that have come down the line ever since, dude, I'm talking about from the Sharps carbine back in 1867 all the way, like there's a ton of dudes that have been doing this for a long time and failing and figuring stuff out, right? And I don't think you're just going to manifest, like, you'll fail, but you won't know why, right? Like, you won't understand why. And so a lot of this is, man, like, you probably should go do something like an Appleseed course, where like somebody lays you behind a gun, and shoot like some 22 rifle and learn what perfect rifle marksmanship is and what happens when you don't do it, and be able to start to correlate cause and effect of your input into the gun, right? And what's happening. Because a lot of times, man, like, dudes they'll fail and they'll get done and they'll just look at their gun. They're like, oh, I must have lost 0. And it's like, no, dude, you literally looked like a Girl Scout over there trying to shoot a 50 caliber. That's why it didn't go good. You know what I mean? But they don't know that. You know what I mean? Because they ain't never figured out what right is. It's just like, dude, it's very similar to pistol grip. Like, it would be very
context.
It'd be very difficult for you to just manifest what a good grip is with nobody guiding you along the way, right? Like, you're probably not just going to arrive there at some point. You know what I mean? Somebody has to say, hey, man, here's what's going on. Look for this. And you're like, oh, shoot. Okay, I get it now. You know what I mean? Like, that moment has to occur before you know what you're doing. So I don't want to say don't go to a match, because you'll definitely learn something, right? But I do think that there's dramatic benefit in whatever you can jump into. Like, jump into a class, man, and it ain't got to be no class from no bunch of Green Berets or nothing crazy like that. It ain't got to be from nobody like me or nothing. Like, go to that local dude that's teaching people how to zero hunting rifles at the public range for $10. You know what I mean? Like, learn how to shoot a gun, because it ain't just pull the trigger and hope for the best. There's some stuff to this. So, but I absolutely, I always think that dudes need to jump into matches, man, no matter, regardless of your skill level, right? If you can be safe with a gun, go. But I ain't so sure that I would tell my son, hey, dude, go pay $150 and go to this match, even though you know nothing, right? Because that's probably just gonna be a waste of money.
Right.
So I would rather him take that $150 and go pay for a one day from somebody to teach him how to get prone behind a gun and actually shoot. I think that money probably carry a little farther right there.
Yeah, that's something that Brennan and I have talked about too. And we talk about that in our video, shameless plug to our USPSA series. When you are able to put some time in to kind of prepare yourself, regardless of your skill level, you're just going to have way more fun at the match, knowing that you actually will do well. That doesn't mean that you're going to win, because you're most likely not going to win, but you typically have a little bit more fun when you do well at something, right? Versus just absolutely falling flat on your face. And so being able to prep yourself a little bit, I think is great advice.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Cool.
The goal for me is never like, this is going to sound kind of weird. Like the goal is never winning. Like I don't ever think about like, I want to go win. Like, of course I do. Right. You can't turn that off, but like my intention is to put on a winning performance. Right. And that might win, that might not. But like with the last thing I want to do is walk away from this match today and feel like an idiot. Right. Because I knew better and I chose to do something different.
I think that's the same probably across all the competitive sports. The guys at the top, that's what they're going out to do the thing they know how to do as best as they can do it and see what happens.
Yep.
100%. Cool. Yeah, honestly, that's really cool, man. It honestly makes me want to get my butt out to a match like that and start kind of dinking around with that. I think that would be pretty interesting. So let's get into another kind of topic. So let's talk about your training regimen. So live fire, dry fire, and to caveat this, for people who may or may not know who you are or what you do, like you also shoot pistols. You also shoot like shorty dot carbines, right? Like 50 yards and in and do that kind of stuff as well. I am always fighting like what I need to be working on, because inherently if I spend a whole bunch of time with my pistol, I pick up my rifle and I kind of suck a little bit with it, and then I get spun up on that, and then it's like, oh boy, it's been a while since I pushed it with a pistol, right? And it's very difficult to balance that. So you're kind of doing 3 different kinds of stuff, I would say, at least. How are you dividing up that stuff, and what does the training look like in both live fire and dry fire?
It's super coincidental you asked me that. I got a question from an alumni of mine yesterday, and he said, "Hey man, this just dawned on me. How are you maintaining such a high level of skill in all of the different things that you do? Because you do like night vision and USPSA and red dot, 2-gun stuff and DMR, and all this." And then he's like, and the more I think about it, the more like I realized like that. He said that in my mind is what separates you from your peers, because everybody else specializes in a specific thing, but you do all the things. How do you do that? And I answered him with this simple sentence of, I work my ass off. That's true.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of nights before the night vision match to put on some nods and go out to the range and just do dry fire in the backyard, right? I'm not going to blast the gun while the kids and everybody's asleep, but I can do some visual stuff, right? And pay attention to some things. So I did that leading up to that match. This week is all dry fire and all live fire for the DMR stuff. Next week will be all movement based stuff with the carbine and getting comfortable with these crazy shots they're supposed to have. Dude, they're supposed to have at the IPSC or at the IWI World Shoot, they're supposed to have it's the classic targets, so the turtles, right? And they're going to have the open, no shoot, open stack, at like 50 and 60 yards, like standing unsupported with a rifle. So
that's crazy.
This is either going to go really great for me or it's not. There's probably not going to be much in between there. We'll see what happens. But anyway, to answer your question, man, I would say that 10% of what I do is live fire. So the only time I live fire the gun is to proof data, right? Proof concepts, proof technique ideas, and things like that, or to remind myself that the gun moves. So one of the biggest struggles that I have had to overcome in dry fire, and I think everybody is struggling with this, even if they don't realize they are, is that like we go around and we say your dry fire should replicate your live fire, right? But we don't really say like, no, bro, I mean literally, like literally it should replicate live fire. Like how often are you drawing a pistol in front of your face and you're just holding it, you're not gripping it, right? Because it's not going to go bang, right? And now how much subconscious bad stuff are you building because you're doing 90% of your stuff in that mode, right? And then you go to shoot a pistol and all of a sudden it's flopping around, and you're like, what's wrong? My dry fire ain't working. It's like, because you ain't doing your dry fire the right way, right? So
correct.
With the match, the DMR stuff, basically all of my dry fire is positional. So I'm repping. I'll start 3 to 5 yards off a barricade, which is typically where they start us at. And this can be a barricade in the house, right? This can be like I'm looking around inside this Airbnb right now. I see like 9 barricades just looking around. Like there's a clothes basket looking thing over here. There's 2 chairs. There's a couch. There's a table. There's a table. Make it up. And I'm going to set a par time very similar like what you would do with a pistol, right? So my general standard is from 3 to 5 yards off a barricade on the buzzer. I want to be mounted and taking the first shot on a 3 MOA target in less than 4 seconds. And so I'm going to start at 4 seconds and just rep that. I've been doing a lot of stuff with this idea lately that's called RPE. It's called rate of perceived exertion. I don't know if you ever heard of that. A lot of guys in the shooting community aren't really tuned up to it. It's a CrossFit idea or a more physical workout kind of idea, but it's working pretty cool in dry fire and in live fire training. Basically, the idea is when the clock goes off, your perception of time is completely unreliable, right? Like you have no idea how much time has elapsed. All you can go off of is your feeling, right? Like you can feel whether or not you're pushing to the limit or not. And so we're trying to isolate that feeling and be able to control it and choose it, right? And so basically, the first couple of reps are going to be at what I would perceive to be 70% of my rate of perceived exertion, right? I would assess this as 10 out of 10 perfect reps. Like I can do this over and over and over and over. It's totally within my control, right? The training, like when the real training starts, I'm switching from 70 to 100, right? And while I'm doing it at 100, there's going to be a ton of mistakes, right? And I'm going to try to like fix those mistakes, pay attention to them. What are they? Isolate them, put my conscious mind on one thing at a time, that kind of stuff. And I'm looking for 101, right? I'm trying to gain a percent. And then I'm finishing with 90%, which is match mode, right? Like I'm finishing it like I'm in total control, but I got to be careful. You know what I mean? Like that kind of feeling. And so what I typically will do, like just as a general idea, I'm going to rep standing barricaded off of this one barricade. Cool, man. The first 2 or 3 reps are going to be 70%. Around 10 to 15 are going to be at 100, and then the final 5 or so are going to be at 90. And I'm paying really, really close attention, almost like a meditative like state of focus to like really what this feels like. Like I want to, because when the buzzer goes off, I know that if I can isolate that feeling, I can replicate it, right? And if I replicate it, this is how I do good consistently, right? So I've been doing a lot of that. Once I'm done with that, that typically takes, believe it or not, 3 to 5 minutes. It ain't much. And then I move to kneeling, right? And I'm going to do a single knee, like a strong knee up position. I'm going to do a really weird, super high position double knee. I'm going to do a super low position double knee. I'm going to throw in my little chain barricade, and because like getting stable off a chain very quickly is very hard. So I work that a lot, not because you'll see that a lot, but you do see it. And when you see it, it is a great opportunity. It's almost like a single hand shooting stage at USPSA. If you're really good at it, you can pull away right there. Right. And so
because everyone sucks at it.
Yeah. And so I prioritize the weird stuff sometimes just in a little bit of intentional focus, just to make sure that I don't want to be scared of it. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to get there and be like, oh crap, oh good, because like anytime somebody's like, all right, on string 2, you're going to start strong hand only, and then like the lamentations of the range bitches begin, right? Everybody's like, oh good Lord, oh God, I don't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? And so I do a lot of that. I'll practice standing to prone a good bit, just dropping prone like with an extreme amount of aggression. I stack up a bunch of those little square pads that people have in their like home gyms that go together like a puzzle, right? I'll stack up some of those, and I will literally become comfortable making my feet go out from under me, and that's not a comfortable thing to do until you do it a lot.
No. Right.
And then you got to do that while bipod's being deployed and all this other crap's going on too. So I'll practice that stuff. And then I'll have at least a little bit of focused dry fire on running something like every now and then you'll see a dude, match director, throw up something like a PRS stage where you get 5 positions and you're going to shoot at one target the whole time, and you get 1 shot per position. Like you don't get to, like it ain't just shoot till you hit. It's 1 hit, man. And if you don't get it, you don't get it. Move on, right? And so like I'll spend 3 to 5 minutes of like, what does it look like and what does it feel like when missing's not an option, like that speed, right? And that's basically what it is. It's very intentional, and it's very, very focused. Like I don't like to be bothered. I turn my phone on do not disturb and play Pandora. I dry fire to music a lot. And I just really try to isolate my brain because I'm really bad about trying to like my brain's like a tornado of thoughts constantly, man. And it's very hard for me to consciously focus on one specific thing. Very hard for a period of time. And so it truly is the dojo, man. Like it's a very meditative like state of focus where I'm spending a minimum of 10 minutes or so doing something. So training up for this match, I am dry firing with the big gun twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, doing positional stuff. And so tomorrow I was supposed to go to the range, but it's going to be pouring rain, so I'll probably end up going Thursday. And what I'm going to do Thursday is the hard mechanical stuff that you need to go shoot. So I'm going to check for point of impact shift and the point of impact shift's consistency with different positions and different pressures being applied to the rail. That way, like if I get a 0.3 shift low or something when I go, mount it on a bipod at the end of the gun, like I need to jot that down and know that so that I can add that into my data when I'm getting ready to do a stage or something. So just the little technical things like that.
Yeah,
I know that.
Cool.
I know that was a lot. You got any questions
on
that?
No, that's a ton. I mean, that's great. I mean, I think honestly that should give people a basic roadmap of some stuff they could start working on like tonight in their living room, right?
So,
Which
dude,
is
like
cool.
once you get to a certain level, right, where you can pull the trigger out, moving the gun, you got good data, and you can hit the target. Like the money is made in how fast you can get in position to do that, and then how fast you can break position to do that. And I really do think that one of the things that like has given me a whole lot of it's been very easy for me to come into this sport and do well with just a little bit of experience because of my background in USPSA and two gun stuff. Like I know how to move. I understand how to do this. And so like when I'm setting up into positions, like I'm constantly strategizing where I'm going next and where I want my weight to be, like where they ain't even thinking about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And I like even my step off, like when I mount, like I load specifically so that my step off is efficient and I'm not drop stepping like they are to go, and all that different stuff. And all that stuff adds up, right? Like I don't have to beat the brakes off anybody. I just got to be, just a little bit ahead here and there. So
love that.
Yeah, it buys you a little time here and there. That could be a huge difference for you. I've been exposed to a little bit of like PRS style stuff, right? And yeah, that was the first thing I noticed about like some pretty good PRS competitors who do quite well. The beep goes off and like the whole beep goes off. And then like 2 or 3 more beeps could have gone off. And then they start moving and they put their bag down and they pat it and then they turn it and they pat it again, which like whatever, like you do need to settle your bag. And then they lay this here and then they back up and then they, and they do all this stuff. And I was like, I don't know anything about this sport, but if I were you, I would be like trying to really get into position fast so I could have the most amount of time behind like the gun instead of like walking up to the barricade. It was just something really,
and then
some funny stuff like that.
Another thing that's wild, man, is like how much gear people will bring to the start line, right? It's like
a lot.
Dude, they got like 9 bags hanging off of them. And like what I want to, and I'm not saying that that's always like wrong. I'm not bashing anybody, right? But like, here's the thing, dude. How many matches have you been going to? Like, how many collective stages have you shot where that was your strategy? And how has that worked out for you? Right? Because like, if the answer is it ain't working out real good, then you probably don't need a different bag, right? Like, it's probably just a different, like, what are the dudes at the top level doing? Because they're not wearing all that stuff. You know what I mean? So, just thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Justin, you have anything to add to that, or does that pretty much cover that?
No, that's good. I mean, that's something that I agree with both of you guys. I've seen it too. I think shooting such a fast-paced sport like USPSA has really embedded and cemented a sense of urgency in everything we're doing besides shooting, right? As a USPSA competitor, especially a high-level USPSA competitor, you have to understand how to isolate super aggressive, fast movement with shooting, because shooting is its own thing, man. Like, it ain't got nothing to do with the shooting, but you got to be able to move fast. And I think having like a sense of urgency kind of embedded in our shooting, I think is a really good thing. I think it's valuable.
So here's the quote, right? You ready for this? The hardest part of DMR shooting, and honestly, a lot of shooting, is being extremely aggressive in a completely relaxed state. Right, like that's
Interesting.
very hard. To be extremely aggressive, but like you can't tighten all this stuff up. You know what I mean? And you can't carry it into the shooting with you. But when there's no shooting to be done, I have not seen the situation yet where moving at 100% is detrimental. Like, go.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
100%.
I like it. There you have some DMR wisdom from a USPSA GM. Training with limited space. So obviously, dry fire, you can get a crap ton of stuff done, especially building positions, figuring out how to get stable. I think that could probably pretty much exclusively be done in dry fire, with the caveat that when the gun moves, it might potentially mess up something. So you should live fire it a bit, just from my experience. A lot of guys are limited on the amount of yards they can shoot at their range, right? So what kind of advice would you give folks like that? Let's say they've got 100 yards, which is pretty good if you got 100 yards for most places. What can you do with 100 yards? And is it the same? Is shooting real small stuff up close the same as shooting, bigger stuff far away?
Yeah. So two things to that. We'll talk about the live fire and the dry fire piece. So the dry fire piece is super easy. There's a website called riflesonly.com, and they sell something called the DFAT. And the DFAT is dry fire focus adapter training. And so what they've got is a little piece that goes on your scope to adjust your crap so that you can now focus that scope on things that are very, very close. It comes with a bunch of different caps. You choose which one you want, and you get a target that replicates certain targets at certain distances, and you can set that up 7 yards away and dry fire on it, and it looks real. Like it's set like in a field background. Like it looks like you're looking through a scope.
That's really cool.
Really?
And so there's your dry fire solution, right? So your dry fire solution is to spend around it's like $100. But it truly does make it where it's raining outside. So what? Do you dry fire in the house? You know what I mean? Like set up some kitchen chairs in there, or like whatever, and then figure out how to get stable. The live fire piece, to steal a quote from Mike Olivella, if your standard is high enough up close, you don't need distance, right? And I really do think that. So the problem is that nobody trains to a high enough standard up close. So a very good example of this that you guys would be able to comprehend would be something like the doubles exercise, right? So a lot of people will shoot doubles with a pistol at 5 yards and say, "Oh, happy meal for me, I got them all in the alpha." But like dudes at a higher level understand that like that's not good enough, man, because just being in the alpha at 5 yards is off target at 25. Like this is not going to work, right? So the way I think about it is, with a pistol, and the way I teach it is like when I'm shooting this gun at 5 yards, man, what is the accuracy potential that is mechanically possible with this weapon, right? Like if I put it in a fixture and it wasn't attached to me, what could it do? And the answer to that is damn near bullet in a bullet hole level of accuracy at 5 yards with most modern day striker fire pistols or whatever, right? Therefore, anything that is not that, I did that, right? Like that's you. And so like I'm very, very critical. I'm not mean about it, like or I'm not, I don't hate on myself or anything, but I'm very, very analytical about anything that is not bullets touching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the same way with the DMR stuff, like if I am not getting the accuracy potential of the weapon and ammo combination, that's me, and I need to figure out what that is, right? And so like I can do that at 100 yards easy. Like put up a 1-inch paster, and if you've got a 1 MOA gun, like you should hit that paster from any position I can put you in on the clock. If you didn't, why not? Right? Like what happened? Same kind of concepts, right? The only thing that distance does for us is it can give us varying target sizes very easily, without having to set anything up. Like they're already out there and you can just work back and forth the different sizes. But another thing you can do is, how about like you ever set up a 1-inch paster, a 3-inch sticker, and a B8, right? And like work positions on that. Like each target gets 2 from each position, like that kind of stuff, right? You'll very quickly like be able to figure out what certain targets need. And then where was I going? Dang it, I was right there. Anyway, so basically, man, oh, I get it. The other thing that distance does for us that we can't replicate, unfortunately, and you can't. And the downside of this is you can't choose to replicate it, even if you have distance, is wind, right?
Wind. Yep.
And external environments like mirage and things like that potentially. Um, the wind is one of those things. I'm convinced that there is no class and no information and no amount of knowledge you can possess to make you good at shooting in wind. You got to just go do it, man. And what'll happen is you will begin to develop this weird thing. Like today, there was an A-zone piece of steel at 600 yards, and I'm looking out across this valley. The Clinton House just made this big. They call it the UKD ranges. They built it so that PRS would start hosting matches out there because that's a big money sport, right? And
Yep.
and it's, dude, it's so beautiful. Like they've got like 12 barricades with their own like little mulch beds and like in separating walls and all these random pieces of steel. It's just great. I was
cool.
fortunate enough to get access to be able to go out there, and so I ranged this target, and I'm going to shoot it off of I think it was on like a rooftop or something. I was trying to get pretty good at, and I hadn't shot at it yet. I had been working the 400, 500 stuff, and then I went to that, and it was an A-zone piece of steel, which that's freaking tiny at 600 yards, right?
Very small. Yep.
And
Very
I'm
small.
looking at it, and dude, there was not much in my scope that like I could see that was giving me anything by way of wind. But I know, like based on looking at the terrain, wind moves like water, right? And so I'm looking at the terrain, and I'm like, I know, like I feel it on my face, which means I know it's catching velocity coming down through there, and it's doing something, right? And so I was like, man, all right, that's at least a 0.2 wind hold for that, and a 0.2 wind hold is make or break on a target that's 5 inches wide, right?
Certainly.
And I got to thinking, but what if it's 0.4, right? And so I started kind of battling with this, and I said, all right, I'm going to take what it's got to be, and I'm going to put what it might be, and I'm going to try to bracket all that in the target, right? And I fired that shot, and I hit with a 0.4 wind hold, and the dude that was out there, you know, was like, how'd you know? And I couldn't answer him. I don't know. I just know. I've seen this movie before, man. You know what I mean? Like I know it's something, right? And that's a big thing. A lot of people just don't give it something. Like you got to give it something. Like lesson number one of wind is that crap blows, right? So like do something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can't just hold center and hope for the best while your freaking hair's flopping up, man. Like it ain't gonna work, you know. So anyway, that being said, yeah, dry fire in the house is totally doable. Dry fire on like, you know, real barricades out in the outdoors is often for me a very beneficial time. Like I get to be outside, be in the sunshine, be by myself, and just dry fire. But when I got to, like, being indoors is not a big deal. And then at the range, like honestly, I do all of my positional stuff on 100-yard paper drills. The only time I go to distance is to test data, right? To make sure that my data lines up. Outside of that, I honestly don't shoot at distance all that much, believe it or not. So
interesting.
Like if you can shoot a minute at 100, you can shoot a minute at 500. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. How much do you think that holds you back from being able to like go shoot at 500 yards whenever, you know, or all the time when it comes to calling wind?
So
I mean,
the problem with it is
very heavy.
Yeah, the problem with it is, so wind's going to move any cartridge, right? And that's the first thing. So like there's certain cartridges that you can use that have a benefit when it comes to environmentals, but that benefit is not that it is not affected, right?
Correct.
The benefit is that if you make a bad wind call, the forgiveness zone is increased based on your BCs and your velocities and all this different crap, nerve stuff. So the problem with wind is that you can't, like, okay, so next Thursday, y'all gonna fly down here. We're gonna go to the range and practice wind. Maybe, right? Maybe, right? Like you can't turn it on and off. So like today, there was a good bit of it going on. We had a little weather front coming in. It was piss and rain all in my face the whole time. It was an absolute nightmare to shoot in, but there was some wind. But I bet you I go back next week and it'll be just as calm as can be, like maybe 3 miles an hour. You know, like you can't choose to get it, you know, up to whatever speed you want. So that's why I think a lot of it is dude, you got to go shoot these matches and just deal with what you get and learn the lessons, right? Now, a thing you can do that a lot of guys do, well, not a lot of guys. There are not a lot of guys that do this, but some of them do. One thing that is very affected by any wind is a 22 long rifle round, right? And so a lot of guys will build purpose-built 22s to go train with, and they will train at 100 yards in a 3-mile-an-hour wind and have to hold wind. To be able to hit the center of whatever they're shooting at. So I mean, there's ways to do it. One of the most fascinating ways to understand wind is if you've got the ability. Now, guys, don't go set the woods on fire, right? But if you've got tracers, right, and you can shoot a tracer to like a 600 or 800 yard target in some wind and let a dude watch what happens. Like, it truly is like, anybody that's ever played a golf game on a Game Boy has done this. Like, it's the same thing. Like, you've got to angle into the wind because it's going to push. It's the same thing. But it's weird. It's like when dudes see it, they're like, oh, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah like that. You know?
I've seen that with people, like the first time they actually see trace all the way from shooter to the target through their scope. They're like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly what it does.
It did this. Yeah.
And so, I'm a foot short and I'm like 5 feet to the left of this target, but I understand now that it's doing one of these. I'm still holding right. And as soon as they see that, things tend to work out pretty good. And I would imagine, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I would imagine getting to the point where you can spot your own trace, impact, and splash, that is going to be hugely beneficial. And that's where, like, get out, shoot those matches, spot that stuff, self-correct, and put that in your bank of experience to go, all right, we had 5-mile-an-hour winds gusting to 10 yesterday, and here's what I was seeing at these different yard lines. But I was able to go, okay, I made an incorrect wind call. I was 0.4 mils off. It needed to be bolder or whatever,
What if you could build such a position behind any barricade that you were so consistent that when you fired the shot, the reticle lifted and returned to within 0.2 mils of what you just held, and then watch where the bullet hits in the reticle, and then just take that spot to the target, right? Like, that's all you've got to do, right? Like, you just, like, if it settles back, like, that bullet's trying to scream at you, this is what's happening, right? So just take that spot and put it in the center of the target. That's where the hit is. You know what I mean? And so why is natural point aim important? Why do I got to have good recoil mitigation? Why? Well, go shoot, man. You'll find out. Like, it all starts coming together. The answer's on the range. So yeah, I mean, it truly is. There's a lot to learn in this, man, and there's so much by way of consistency in this sport. Like, if you change anything, like, there are effects, like anything, and those effects, like, you seeing those effects based on your context or environment hold no bearing on the fact that they're still real, right? Like, just because you're shooting at 100-yard seize-on piece of steel and you ain't seen that effect, don't mean it ain't happening.
Sure.
Right? Like, just today, Scott Peterson over at Veracity, he got, I think, like 4 different rifles, and he moved bipod from the front of the rail. He put it at the front of the rail, shot a group, put it at the back of the rail, shot a group, put it on a bag, shot a group, and that crap's moving. Like, you can watch it kind of shift all around, right? And this is with like the Sons of Liberty broadsword and like the Seeker and all these super beefed up rails that don't have no flex. No, they do. Like, they do. It's just minimal based on the other offerings, right? And so, does it matter? Well, I don't know. What's your context, man? Because if your context is a freaking 5-inch wide piece of A's on steel, then you need to know what flex is doing. You know what I mean? If it's a full size piece of steel, maybe not.
Sure.
And a lot of guys just don't have that level of understanding of, like, any input into the gun changes everything. Your position, if your position breaks down behind the gun, as the gun is coming rearward in recoil, your position breaks down. You can cause shots to go high because you weren't solid behind the gun and the Projo was still in the barrel, right? Like that, all these little things. It's wild.
Yeah, even with newer like rifle shooters, you get them down and you start, like going through the basics of like natural point of aim, prone, right? Your body and your shoulders in line to the target. If you zero right there and then you cant your body like typical, right, to the left as you're prone, your group's going to be different.
You changed everything.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, but I'm aiming at the same spot. It's like,
yes,
doesn't matter. It's weird magic voodoo stuff, but it matters.
Yeah.
I think you guys would dig it, man. If you got into it, but be careful because it truly is like a black hole. It'll suck you in, man. It's a lot. Because like what'll happen is you'll go and you'll have an experience like Justin said, I finished very poorly, right? But now he knows something that he didn't know then. So the next time he goes, he's going to do a little bit better, right? Probably a lot better, honestly. And then next thing you know, like you're lapping at the top 15, right? And you're like, dadgummit, like I want it. You know what I mean?
It's in reach.
Yeah. And so, yeah. So it's interesting for sure.
Love it.
That's cool. Well, Mark, if you don't mind, let's get into a couple of listener questions, some stuff just that we've kind of collected here. So I've got 3 of them that I think will be pretty good. What's the most underrated piece of gear for long range shooting, matches, all that good stuff? Something that not something that everybody's got, but something you're like, I didn't think it was going to be real important, and this is awesome.
A good set of binoculars and a tripod so that you can watch all the other competitors shoot before you and watch what happens and strategize your plan based on what the environment is doing to them.
That's good.
I like
that.
If every competitor before you is missing right, we call that a clue, right?
That means you got some wins.
Something is happening, right? So I watch everybody, man. Like I'm the first dude to the stage. I'm set up and I'm ready. Push the button. You know what I mean? And I ain't even got to be RO, and like I ain't got to be spotting. I just want to watch. And like a lot of times the trace and the splash, and especially like even if the miss is like I ain't sure if that was wind or them, you can watch dust fly up if you got good enough binos, and you can see what that does. You know, like all kind of different stuff you can learn just by watching through some good glass. So for Christmas, not this past year, but the year before, I've been hollering for some good binos for a long time, man.
Mm-hmm.
And my crazy freaking wife, she's out of her mind. She knew that I would never do this for myself. She bought me some freaking Swaro NL Pure binos, and dude, those things are like it's like superpower. It's like superpower. It's crazy.
That is cool.
And so that is it like if you can get some good binos, and it ain't got to be nothing like that, right? I mean, I'm not saying that won't be beneficial if you can fit the bill, right? Like I mean, good glass is great, but like just anything where you can just look at what's happening downrange, and preferably I would like to have. So what I do is I've got a plate that I set up on my tripod, and I got binos on one side, and I've got a Leupold spotter on the other that's got a mill grid in it. So before anybody shoots, I'm milling targets to see like what can I get away with out here. And then when they start to shoot, I'll switch over to the binos for a larger field of view and just better glass clarity. So some good spotting glass is probably one of the most underrated things.
And
anybody that you see in the top 5 is going to have that. Right.
What magnification binos do you have? What are those?
The ones I have are 10s.
Okay.
10s.
Yeah.
10 to 12 is generally pretty beefy.
I have not yet. Now the clarity of the glass is a part of this, but I have not yet desired more magnification out of those. Like I can see everything I need to see.
Mm-hmm. That is one thing about binos that some people may not know, but like as soon as you get, I would say the mark is about 10. As you get over 10, like those binos need to be tripoded. Like that's not just like a hold it in your hands and just kind of scan for stuff. Like
and I mean even if you
pretty rough.
Even if you don't have a good tripod or you ain't got the money for it or whatever, like dude, get you a set of binos anyway, because you can take like I've seen dudes before with broomsticks and a game changer on top of them, and they'll set their binos on that. Like you just need something to hold it that ain't you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like there's a budget way of doing this.
Put a little weight on top of it and
something.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So good.
Cool.
Some good glass and watch the other shooters go before you. That's again, there's so many parallels I think with all this competition stuff. Like I 100% watch shooters, good or bad, who go before me on a stage at USPSA match, because I want to see like what tripped them up. Like, oh, he ran into this thing, and then he miscalculated his position, and he had to shuffle his feet, and he burned a second. Like, okay, I need to probably hit that position pretty precise. He you know. Okay.
Or like every
cool.
guy is smoking a no shoot on this one position. Like Brendan, we've had that before. We're like,
there you go.
The first five guys.
3 points.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So that was underrated piece of gear. With this one we kind of touched on, and I don't know if you have anything else you'd want to add to it, but the question was, how would you maximize your practice session with very limited time? I think you kind of touched on it with dry fire. That dry fire session doesn't really have to take very long.
Man, your options are either wait until you have 30 minutes to dry fire, or dry fire for 3 minutes every day, right? Like that's your options, right? Like,
there you go.
And so like I don't dry fire for 30 minutes to an hour. Like I dry fire for no more than 15 minutes, because like after 15 minutes, my brain's smoked. Like I can't do it anymore. So like I would rather you dry fire standing unsupported, standing barricade supported for 3 to 5 minutes, and then tomorrow do kneeling barricade supported for 3 to 5 minutes, and then the next day do just prone fundamental pull the trigger without moving a gun for 3 to 5 minutes, and like touch the gun every day, man. This thing needs to be an extension of me. I don't need this to feel weird, and I would much rather you do that. Like consistency over volume always. With that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Another question. What is something that 2024 Mark would tell Mark when he was getting into scope carbines? What is something you wish you could give yourself some advice, knowing stuff you know now? What's a piece of advice you give yourself looking back?
That you should not carry your expectations based on your current skill set into this arena. Like when I got my crap pushed in DMR, it hurt my feelings, man. I really thought I was going to do better than that. I didn't think I was going to win, but I thought I was going to do better than that. And like, there wasn't really anything that I saw when looking back at that first match that like was a really big mistake. It was just me. There was nothing I could choose to fix that. Like, it was me. I didn't know what I was doing. And that honestly is probably like the 90% reason that like I'm as passionate about it as I am now. Like there's so much stuff for precision rifle shooting, like precision gas gun shooting, that people don't know. And all of it matters. Like, it ain't just like you just need one. Like, all of it matters. And so like I would tell 2020 Mark, like, just don't go to win, go to learn. And if you go to learn, you'll win, right? But if you go to win, you're gonna walk away with your heart broke. So that was
sounds familiar.
Yep, that was a big moment.
Very cool. Last question for you, and this is one that that I came up with. So, like, Justin and I are both on the same page on this, and I believe you probably are too. But like, we started shooting competition with our pistols, not to get good at competition, right? That is a goal now. But the original goal was to just be good at shooting, and especially because like we stuff a gun in our pants every day and say that we want to protect our family or ourselves or what have you, right? A lot of people are kind of, I see this quite a bit, like, what do you really need nods for? What do you need? What do you need to shoot people past 100 yards for? All this kind of stuff. I have my own feelings on like how you should be capable behind a gun and what you should be able to do. What's your take on that? Like, do you feel there's a real advantage for guys getting into this type of stuff if it's not just for competition? Do you think there's an application for it? Or do you say,
Absolutely.
you know what, this is just plinking? What's your take on that?
Absolutely. So Two parts to that. The first one is that based on the fabric of our nation's like original culture, I feel called to be a capable rifleman, right? So like there's that. And a lot of people, I think that's a very foreign idea to them, right? Because they immediately go, "Oh, good gracious!" Right? Like, if you looked around, like we got it made, you know, and that's true. But we've got it made because the OGs back in the day were riflemen first, right? And one day this will come full circle where we will need riflemen again, right? Like, I believe that with all my heart. We will fight at some point. I don't know when, and I don't know what it's going to look like, and I don't know how nasty it's going to be or how long it's going to last. But it's going to happen, right? And if you think I'm crazy, think back 3 years ago when we were fighting in the parking lot. We were fighting each other over toilet paper because somebody started coughing, right? And like, I'm not crazy, man. Like, it's going to be a flash in the pan like that. Like, something's going to happen, and it's going to be bad, right? There is something that is very, very confidence inspiring about being dangerous 600 yards away, right? Like you cannot. There is nothing you can do to make yourself safe from this rifle, right? Like it's dangerous no matter where you are, right? And like that's a huge force multiplier in my mind. So there's that, right? The more current event application of it is that if you can learn to hold the rifle's capability at 500 yards, then you can learn to hold the rifle's capability at 78 yards, right? And so one of the things that I'm doing with Fletzy down in Charleston is they reached out and they said, man, we found a chink in the armor, right? We've got coppers that are getting into these engagements that are 40, 60, 80 yards away, and we don't really got nothing for that, right? Like we don't really have an SOP for this, you know what I mean? So everything that we do is 25 yards and in with the rifle standing unsupported, and everything we do with the pistol is 25 yards and in. Like we ain't never seen this movie before, so like, what do we do? So what I did for them was I built a curriculum based around maximizing the rifle's potential off of real life, everyday barricades inside of 200 yards, right? And so now, you know, to take Chuck Pressburg's analogy, you got old homeboy behind the stolen Crown Vic with his AK hanging between his legs, and you can see that under the car. And he's got like, you're not going to get a full exposure, but he's going to give you like this, right? Like he's going to peek out from behind the car to see if you're still there, right? I need you to know how to get stable enough off of grandma's chain link fence over here to be able to shoot that at 57 yards and know your ballistic flight path, right? Like, so all of these concepts and these stability principles, like they don't just go away because you're not at 300 yards anymore, right? Like I can mount a position very quickly. I can get solid behind a gun very quickly, stabilize it as best as I possibly can off of whatever barricade it is, because I understand the principles of stability and I know my ballistic flight path because I've taken a little bit of time to look into the knowledge of what my bullet's doing after it leaves this muzzle. And now I'm even more dangerous inside 100 yards than I was when I was just shooting full size paper at 25. Right.
Yeah.
And so it does matter, again, just because your environment or context has not shown you that it matters yet, don't mean it don't matter. Right. Maybe you're just shooting on easy mode, bro. Maybe you need to go to a match. Right.
I dig that a lot.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's gold.
Yeah.
That is really good. I think that is a great note to end it on. Mark, you are real busy traveling, teaching. How do people find you, follow you, keep up with you?
So the easiest way is probably just to hit the website, man. JBStraininggroup.com. So we got a new website coming soon. It's gonna be freaking sweet, dude. I'm so fortunate. I got this crazy loony bird supercomputer nerd working with me now, and he, like, his website ability is insane. It's gonna be all new. We got all new flyers, all new registration set up. Like, it's gonna be very, very seamless and a lot of fun. I had this crazy idea. I was like, hey man, like, because I don't know nothing about computers, right? But I do have like I got dreams, you know, and and I was like, hey man, wouldn't it be cool if we could make like a page on the site called Killing Time, right? Where you just click on that link and it takes you to this thing where you just like play a shooting game, where you're just sitting around, you ain't got nothing to do. You can just play a shooting game on the website. You know what I mean? And he was like, that's going to cost thousands of dollars, you know? And I was like, all right, well, maybe one day, but just keep it in the background for now. But, like I was thinking, like, and once you like knock down, like there'll be a leaderboard, right? And once you like hit the top 10, you get like a 10% off code or something. You know what I mean? I don't know, just something fun. Or like it opens up the portal to the discount codes or something. I don't know.
That's amazing.
Something like that. But anyway, it's going to be a super cool little website, man. That'll be the probably the easiest way. Another way, Instagram is. So Instagram and Facebook are two different things. Facebook, you get the much more personal mark, like where I kind of exist on Facebook. I don't really do a lot on there, but you'll get like me commenting on random stuff, and you'll get me talking about the kids and the wife and my posts and stuff like it's a much more personal thing. The Instagram page is directly devoted to just information. And it's not like my Instagram page is different than a lot of people's by way of like, I don't do a lot of entertainment on there, or at least that's not the original intention. So like you won't see a lot of 1 second draws and a bunch of super duper fast shooting. And that's not to dissuade anybody else that's doing that. It's just, I look at Instagram and I see that like that's already happening in a lot of different places. And so like, I don't really know why I would do that too. So like what I try to do is just be like a constant information source to dudes that want to learn. So I basically kind of update Instagram based on what I'm doing that week or that day, with just like little tidbits of info. We do a lot of lives that are honestly, if you just watched them with no audio, they would look very boring, but I think they're very, very informative if you got the time to sit through them. I have some good dudes on, and I got some really good people that ask some deep questions, and we kind of get into the weeds on that. So Instagram is JBS. I think it's JBS _ training group. And then there's a JBS training group on Facebook, and then there's also Mark Smith on Facebook. I've got a Twitter. I don't ever mess with it. I actually forget that I have it a lot, so don't expect much by way of that. There's a monthly newsletter that goes out. I don't spam people, man. It's basically here's what I've been working on. So like the most recent things that are happening. I found that in the DMR world, there's no really set source where you can go and find out information on various guns that are being offered and marketed as these SPR DMR type guns. So like I'm looking at precision. I'm looking at the general feel of the gun, the recoil impulse, the consistency of the tracking of the gun. I'm looking at what heat does to the gun when it heats up. Because like what most people don't do, and this is a little tip trick for y'all. Most people will group a gun and say, oh yeah, this is my group, I'm zeroed. What they never do is actually shoot the gun like they do on a stage, where they deplete 40 rounds, missing a lot, and then shoot the gun and group it and see what happens, right? So like groups shift around, open up, and weird stuff, and you need to know that stuff, right? So we'll look at that. We'll look at shift based on different loads into the gun, like a lot of cool stuff like that. What's the price of it? What does it like a specific ammo? Does it like any ammo? So we've started kind of doing that and putting that together. That's going to take a long time to do, basically because I don't have a precision ammo sponsor. So just I got to get some nickels together to get some ammo every now and then, and then we'll do another one. But as of right now, we've got a tremendous backing with that as far as the industry submitting guns.
Cool.
That's very cool.
I've got over 10 rifles right now. I think actually over 12 rifles right now. That have been submitted for testing and evaluation, and it's not designed to be this is the best one, this one wins, right? It's just like what are you doing and what do you need, right? And which one of these will do that thing? Because like Kyle DeFore's gun, man, like it ain't the softest shooting gun in the world, right? And it's a little bit flexy when it comes to point of impact shift, but so is everything else, right? But I tell you what, Kyle DeFore's gun has been 0.8 to 1.2 with damn near anything I feed it. Like it's a great general 1 minute gun, and it's $800, bro. You know what I mean? Like, so like,
that's going to check the boxes for a lot of guys.
Yeah. So like that's kind of like, so there's that. But if you want the 0.3 minute gun that don't exhibit a whole lot of flex and is really a freaking race car, I can show you that one too, right? But what do you need? And so there'll be a lot of content coming by way of that. That'll be on the Instagram channel and whatnot, and the newsletter and things like that. And then of course the JBS Training Group podcast, where we do a lot of shop talk and just general chit chat, and then we also have some pretty cool people that come on from time to time and talk about their different parts of the world that they deal in. So a lot of different places that we're at, man. Spread pretty thin, but we're keeping up.
Very cool. Well, for everybody who's listening or tuning into this, I'll be sure to link all of Mark's information in the show notes. So make sure you go check him out if he's coming anywhere near you, which he probably is. Make sure you sign up for one of his classes. Justin and I have both taken classes from Mark. He knows some stuff about shooting and can probably teach it to you. So be sure to check that out. As far as us, you guys know the deal. Gateway-defense.com. We are traveling all over the country this year, teaching classes, mostly performance pistol, but we're doing rifle concealment stuff as well. Upcoming classes, we've got one here coming up this weekend. We've got a class coming to Braselton, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta in March. Another one in Wisconsin in April, and then we're headed to California in April as well. So if you guys are looking for classes upcoming, be sure to check out the website. Our full schedule is up there right now, and that's getting updated all the time. Guys, this has been the Gateway Defense Podcast with Mark Smith. Appreciate you guys listening. Until next time, keep practicing and shooting, and we will see you on the range.